Hello, and welcome to the Apostolic Resource Center. This is Lisa Annabelli. Thank you for joining me today. I am here to share with you a thought that the Lord has impressed upon my heart, and I actually revealed it as a thought to share with my home group on Sunday, and it went over so well, I wanted to talk to you about it today. The reason it went over so well is because it's something that people struggle with, and it's something that we have to address. So I was reading we have a book that we read as a church, and this month is on mission. And as I was reading it, there was a statement in there, and we started talking about the idea of the difference between our purpose and our calling. Now, every one of us knows the verse that says, David fulfilled his purpose in his generation, and then he slept with his fathers. So the idea of having a purpose is something that God has given to each one of us. It's a purpose for which we have been created. Now, this purpose is not necessarily something that everybody knows what it is, and they have mistakenly attached it to their calling. So when their calling shifts, they feel like their purpose shifts. But what I have learned about the difference between purpose and calling, I think is going to disentangle the entangling of purpose and calling, which are absolutely not the same thing. So let's talk about purpose for a minute. What is your purpose? Better stated, what were you created for? Why did God create you? What purpose did he place in you? Why did he create you and place you in the earth realm for such a time as this? This is a question that sold millions of books by a man named Rick Warren when he wrote a book called The Purpose-Driven Life. And then he wrote The Purpose-Driven Church. And then his youth pastor wrote The Purpose-Driven Youth Ministry. So purpose is a huge conversation that everybody wants to know, what is my purpose? Well, when I presented this question to my home group, I had two very specific people in the room that literally were vulnerable, actually three, two men and one woman, and they were very vulnerable to say, I'm 60 years old, I'm 50 years old, I'm 40 years old, and I don't know my purpose. Can you imagine living 40, 50, 60 years and not knowing your purpose, not knowing why God created you? I don't have any shame on them. I don't know that anybody's helped them unlock their purpose, but we did on Sunday during our home group, and I want to help you unlock yours today so that you can also go and help others unlock theirs. So what is purpose? Purpose is something that God planted in you when he created you in your mother's womb. This is not something that changes throughout your life. This will be your baseline or your constant throughout your whole life. So for me personally, my purpose is to be a communicator. That's my purpose. I was created to be a communicator. I communicate the gospel of the kingdom. I communicate through counseling experiences with people. I communicate in public and private settings. And when I look back on my life, it makes me realize why my mouth got me in so much trouble at times, because I was created to be a communicator and I had to learn how to do that effectively. Okay, so we had one man in the room, and I asked him the question. I said, "Sir, what is your purpose?" And he said, "That's a hard question for me. I don't know." And he looked over at his wife, and they've been married for 20 plus years. And he said, "You're going to have to help me with this." And so she started to share with us how when he was a little boy, he used to draw on the walls in his bedroom. So instead of his mom arguing with him about drawing on the walls, his mom would put butcher paper on the wall, and he would just draw and draw and draw and draw some more on the walls. And he knew from a very young age that he was going to be an architect. And so as a group, we were able, from these clues that he shared with us, to help him understand that God created him to be a designer. And what we were able to identify was his purpose. Another man was in the room, and he shared some of his history and how he used to love to play the drums, and how he actually was trained from the age of 5 by a very professional, very popular, and very well-known drummer who was very talented. And so up to the age of 35, this man played the drums, but it never made enough money, and he never became who he thought he would become, so he gave up drumming, and now he's in his early 60s. 25 years without touching drums. And this man with tears in his eyes says, I don't know what my purpose is. So we began to unlock with him the understanding of what his purpose is. As people talked about drums create sound, drums shift atmospheres, drums actually reveal that he's a warrior. And as we began to unlock his purpose for him and reveal to him that God created him to be an atmosphere shifter, a foundation repairer, a warrior, it helped him understand the spiritual warfare that he's endured much of his life. And we actually invited him as a prophetic act to pull out his drum set and to begin to shift the atmosphere in his home by just playing the drums again. You could see the hope rising in these men as they started to identify and understand their purpose. So purpose is your baseline. It's something you've been from the very beginning. God planted it in you. It's who you will always be. You will always default to being that. Now, the difference between a purpose and a calling is that a calling is more of an assignment or a season. Your calling will change throughout your life. Your purpose will remain the same. Your calling, the Bible says that your calling is an assignment that's attached to your life. So for some people, you will have a season in your life where you are called to be a mother, called to raise small children, called to be a father, called to be a provider, called to be a protector, called into some company, called into a certain ministry, called into various seasons, various assignments. But you and I both know, I had a friend of mine recently, he lost his job late last year. He had been with this company for over 25 years and almost feeling like abruptly the season changed. But what I rejoiced in was when he shared with me in early January was that his identity was not wrapped up in his calling, for he knew his purpose. And therefore, now that his calling or assignment or season has changed, it has not shook him to the core because he knew the purpose for which he was made. And I rejoiced with him because many people don't realize that your assignment, your calling, your season is not your purpose. Your purpose is more connected to your identity than your season or your calling, because callings and seasons change, purposes do not. Think of David. If he fulfilled his purpose in his generation and then he went to be with the Lord, he started out as a shepherd boy, and then he played a musical instrument for Saul, and then he ended up on a battlefield and defeated Goliath. And eventually he was anointed and became and took the position of the king of Israel and united them as one group, one nation. So what was David's calling? His calling was at one point to be a shepherd, at one point to be a musician in Saul's court, at one point to be anointed king, and at one point to unite a nation that was divided. Callings, assignments. But his purpose was to be a restorer. Think about it for a minute. He restored the sheep that were trying to be attacked by the lion and the bear. He restored the national identity of Israel that was being challenged by Goliath. He restored the sanity of Saul every time he played on his instrument. And he restored a divided nation that had been split into a northern and southern kingdom and restored them to one nation under God. David's purpose was to be a restorer. And his assignments and his seasons looked different throughout his whole life, but his purpose remained the same. What is your purpose? And what is your current season or calling? If you really look back on your life, I think you will be able to identify your purpose if you're not afraid to look at your callings as seasons, as assignments, and not as your identity. I would encourage you to separate purpose from calling. Because what people struggle with is, why was I created? Not what am I doing? And as we dissect and separate these two, it actually brings hope to people. And my desire for you is that you would meet with people, talk with people, share with people, listen to their story, let them tell you about them. Because in their story, you will hear their purpose and help them identify their season. And it's okay if a season changes. It's okay if assignment shifts. It does not change what you were created to do, which is your ultimate purpose and why God created you. So my friends, I just want to encourage you today. You have been born with a purpose, and you have walked through many callings. I hope this helps you, encourages you, and causes you to be able to help others. My name is Lisa Annabelli. I'm the president and founder of the Apostolic Resource Center. And it is my privilege to be able to release this word of exhortation, this word of explanation, this hopefully word that will bring an expansion into other people's lives and remove the hopelessness and restore purpose, even in the midst of your current season. Thank you for listening. I hope you have a great day.